In order for you to understand the real significance of this new generation of cameras, I want to take you to the factory that we are building just for this camera. This is an entirely new kind of camera, designed in terms of the ideas we've had for 20 years, and the factory is designed in terms of that camera. While we are traveling, you'll have an unusual opportunity to see our buildings here and other buildings on the way to Norwood. And when we're in Norwood, I shall point out some of our other activities that we plan for that new site. When we first saw this land, with its lovely farmhouse and silo and barn, we were determined that when we built our plant, we would keep the charm and feeling of the whole farm. You will see in these buildings, which IMP designed for us, a very pleasant contrast between the modern and the old New England rolling countryside. These buildings are just coming into operation. The whole site is a continuous inspiration for all of those who work here and those of us in other parts of the company when we come to visit or to work here ourselves. We're across Route 128 now in Waltham. These are the first factory buildings we started building 15 years ago. They turn out millions of boxes of film every month. These are chemical synthesis buildings and coating buildings to provide materials for our plants in Waltham and our new plants in Norwood. Here's a very interesting little building, the pilot plant for a much larger factory to come. Here we are learning to manufacture a new type of color negative for a new type of color film. The film will be used for a new generation of cameras that I will talk about later. That's our Needham distribution center below us now. It serves all of the New England areas. We have 10 centers across the country. Suddenly we're across Boston with the Charles River just below on the other side of the Prudential Center there. We've been in Cambridge almost 30 years. We have buildings all over the city, offices, laboratories, including space in that modern complex called Technology Square, which houses our corporate headquarters. Seems a far cry from that little red brick building below. That was one of our first buildings. It still houses my own laboratory. Now, south of Boston and Cambridge, only a few minutes by air and about 40 minutes by expressway, we go on to New Bedford. This empty land, about 125 acres of it, is the site of what will be our new color negative factory, the beginnings of which you saw back in Waltham. Here's our destination. This is Norwood, a few minutes flying time from both New Bedford and Waltham. We're building yet another complex of factories here. Below, you see a new building which will manufacture polarizing materials for industrial and sunglass use. Next to it is still another film plant where we will make our new color transparency film. The building on the left is the power station to serve the whole complex. And the vast building coming in below is our new camera factory, the first we have ever built. I want to land now and tell you more about the factory and the new kind of camera that will be manufactured here. This building represents perhaps the most important symbol of our plans for the next few years. It will be the first building dedicated entirely to our camera production and operated entirely by us. It has been our policy over the last 20 years to design, engineer, support the tooling for our own cameras, but to have much of the assembly done elsewhere. I shall tell you later why, although we intend to keep our suppliers and assemblers happy over the years, why the time has come for us to have a factory of our own. Before I do that, let us see what will be in this factory. The raw materials come in here on trucks. We're standing right here. They come down to these overhead storage areas in which enough material is stored overhead for a week's operation. They move automatically from these storage areas into these bays where there are automatic transfer machines and automatic devices for handling the drilling, jigging and drilling. They move from there to this overhead conveyor, which takes them through electrophoresis baths for depositing very elegantly thin uniform layers of paint on the components, and then through the drying ovens and out toward the assembly lines. They move in this direction and then are joined with other frame components of the camera to give the whole frame assembly of the camera. Meanwhile, over in this region, the delicate elements, the shutter components, the integrated circuits, the fine wiring, are all being put together to give the photosensitive and light control components of the camera, which in turn move along this direction to join with the heavy elements coming in this direction. The camera will move from this position to an automatic packaging area and come out here completed. And as it moves from the line, the serial number will be associated with the operator, perhaps even, as the Japanese do, the operator's name will be associated with the actual camera, so that forever after, that camera can be referred back to the person associated with the making of it. We feel that this kind of human participation results in much higher reliability and much deeper human satisfaction for the people involved in the operation. Of course, it must be supplemented by classical statistical quality control. Nevertheless, we have never found that statistical quality control by itself could take the place in an intricate and sensitive device of human participation by interested people. After seeing that layout of a magnificent modern factory, you're probably wondering why we chose this time to build a factory for ourselves. Why did we not do it sooner? Why are we doing it now? A great deal of the secret of our success up until now has been that we have concentrated on concepts in cameras and in film. That has given us a heavy technological weighting. It has let us be years ahead of the field because most of our people are thinking. They are not preoccupied with the problems of everyday management. And I should say that our hope is that the splendid arrangements that we have with our suppliers for cameras and film will continue to be assets for many years to come. But to understand why now? Why a factory of this complexity, automaticity? We have to go back to 1944 to the very first concept of a kind of photography that would become part of the human being, an adjunct to your memory, something that was always with you, so that when you looked at something, you could, in effect, press a button and have a record of it in its accuracy, its intricacy, its beauty, have that forever. Now, that kind of camera implied a whole family of technologies which did not exist in 1944. Obviously, the place to start was in the image itself. The first domain in which we did our work was in making the instantaneous image itself without liquids. The cameras were large, as you recall, but acceptable. They were grand machines for a grand purpose. They were a long way from the dream which I used to talk about then of being able to take a wallet out of my pocket and perhaps open the wallet, press a button, close the wallet, and have the picture. In 1944, one would have thought that a camera that would do what the ColorPack 2 does would, if at all conceivable, cost perhaps $100. And yet it is clear that as far as we have come, and as remarkable as that achievement seems to be, we are still a long way from the concept, from the realization of the concept of a camera that would be, like the telephone, something that you use all day long, whenever an occasion arises in which you want to make sure that you cannot trust your memory, or when you want to record any object of great interest to you or any beautiful scene. A camera which you would use not on the occasion of parties only, or of trips only, or when your grandchildren came to see you, but a camera that you would use as often as your pencil or your eyeglasses. When we put all that together, the camera that we will be giving not only the United States, but the whole world in a few years from now, when this plant is operating, cannot be measured in value by dollars. $200 or $300 or $500 could not a few years ago have bought, cannot even today, buy what will be in that camera. And yet, because we are making an integrated plant like this, we will be able to manufacture that camera at a cost comparable to our present pack cameras. Even then, with the technologies evolved, if they were not put together in a unified way, in a unitary operation like this, if we could not plan on millions and millions, tens of millions of these extraordinary devices, the camera would have to cost several $100s instead of several tens of dollars, cost to make. Now that then is why we have built this kind of factory. The factory in the camera and the film being a single unit. It's almost as if this factory is the camera, but compressed into the very compact device that you will soon be carrying with you a few years from now. The camera is the factory is the camera. I look forward to the time a few years from now when you come here to share with us the excitement and deep satisfaction of seeing all this in operation and at the same time starting to use our long-awaited ultimate camera that is a part of the evolving human being.